Imagine this. You are standing at the edge of your life, looking back at all the decisions that led you here. Each choice, each compromise, each moment you said yes when your soul whispered no. You've built something impressive, a career, relationships, status. Yet something feels missing, empty, hollow. The achievements that were supposed to fulfill you have become weights around your neck, and you can't understand why. What if I told you that the freedom you've been seeking has been available to you all along? That the cage confining you wasn't built by society, your parents, or your circumstances, but by your own hands? The most disturbing truth about human existence isn't that we're trapped. It's that we volunteer for our imprisonment. We willingly exchange authenticity for acceptance, passion for security, and truth for comfort. And the most painful part? Nobody asked us to make this sacrifice. Nobody demanded it. Have you ever wondered why, despite having more choices, more information, and more opportunities than any humans in history, rates of anxiety and depression continue to rise? What would you do if you discovered that the very strategies you've been using to find happiness are precisely what's keeping it from you? The paradox of self-imprisonment works like this. The more desperately you attempt to control your life, the less connection you feel to it. The harder you work to earn approval, the further you drift from who you really are. This isn't just philosophical speculation. This is the inescapable machinery of the human psyche. The architecture of our self-made prison. To understand how we build our own cages, we must examine the four walls that surround us. Wall 1. The illusion of control. Ancient Stoics like Epictetus understood something that modern humans have forgotten. The line between what we can and cannot control is razor thin. Yet we exhaust ourselves trying to manage the unmanageable. Other people's opinions, random circumstances, inevitable change. Look at Emperor Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, could control the fate of millions. Yet in his private journals, he repeatedly reminded himself of his own powerlessness over the essential facts of existence. Death comes, opinions form, nature unfolds. Meanwhile, modern psychological research from the University of California has shown that individuals with an overdeveloped need for control experience 60% more cortisol production. The stress literally eats them from within. When was the last time your careful planning was completely derailed by something unexpected? How did it feel to realize that your control was merely an illusion? The truth is darker, more complex, impossible to ignore. Control is not strength, it's fear wearing a mask of competence. Wall 2. The validation trap. The human need for social approval isn't just powerful, it's primal. Neuroscience now confirms what philosophers like Heidegger suggested. Our brains process social rejection in the same regions that process physical pain. Consider the experiment at Dartmouth College, where participants were subjected to mild social exclusion while their brains were scanned. The results? Their neural activity was indistinguishable from someone experiencing physical harm. We aren't just influenced by others' opinions, we're addicted to them. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of seeing ourselves primarily through others' eyes. He witnessed how this mentality enabled ordinary citizens to participate in the horrors of World War II. They relinquished their moral autonomy. They followed. They complied. What parts of your life exist only to impress others? What achievements have you pursued not because they brought you joy, but because they brought you validation? Wall 3. The authenticity paradox. The more desperately you try to discover your true self, the more elusive that self becomes. This is the authenticity paradox that philosophers like Simone de Beauvoir understood intuitively. We are not fixed entities waiting to be uncovered. We are constantly in creation. Yet most people treat authenticity like an archaeological dig rather than an ongoing creative process. Studies from Harvard's longitudinal happiness research show that individuals who view their identity as fluid and ever-evolving report 42% higher life satisfaction than those searching for a fixed, authentic self. The difference is staggering. Have you ever found yourself saying, "That's just not me," about something you've never tried? Have you limited your potential based on a story about who you think you are? Interruption. Wall 4. The Comfort Conspiracy. Humans will choose familiar pain over unfamiliar possibility. We cling to the known, even when it hurts us, because uncertainty triggers ancient survival mechanisms that scream danger. Consider the famous experiments with monkeys who were given the choice between their current living conditions or potential freedom, with unknown consequences. Almost universally, they chose to stay. Security over possibility. The known over the unknown. Sound familiar? Friedrich Nietzsche called this the spirit of gravity, the weight that pulls us back to our comfortable patterns, even as we dream of flying. The heaviness that whispers, "Stay where you are, don't risk, don't change." When was the last time you remained in a situation you knew was wrong for you? A job, a relationship, a location, simply because leaving felt too uncertain. The liberation framework, breaking free from our self-constructed prison, requires something more profound than positive thinking or surface-level change. It demands a fundamental shift in how we relate to existence itself. Here are the 4 keys that unlock the cage. Key 1. Radical acceptance. Not resignation, but clear-eyed acknowledgement of what is. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron describes this as jumping into the river, choosing to be fully present with reality rather than fighting against its current. This means accepting that control is largely an illusion. That uncertainty is not just inevitable, but necessary for growth. That pain is not a mistake in the system, but an essential teacher. The moment you truly accept that you cannot control the uncontrollable is the moment you reclaim your power. Try this. Identify one situation in your life that you've been fighting against. Something you cannot change, yet continue to resist. Now ask yourself, what would freedom look like if I stopped struggling against this reality? Key 2. Value clarification. Most people live their entire lives without ever consciously examining their values. They absorb them from family, culture, advertising, social media, a patchwork of external influences rather than intentional choice. Socrates famously claimed that the unexamined life is not worth living. Strong words. But what if he was right? When your values come from outside rather than within, you'll always feel that subtle disconnect, the quiet dissatisfaction that something isn't quite right. Ask yourself, if no one would ever know about my choices, if there were no external rewards or punishments, what would I still find meaningful? What would still matter? The answer reveals your authentic values, not the ones you've been programmed to pursue. Key 3. Courageous action. Knowledge without action is merely philosophy. Understanding the cage is not the same as walking out of it. Look at Rosa Parks. One woman, one moment, one decision to act in alignment with her values rather than external expectations. Her refusal to move to the back of the bus wasn't just political. It was existential, a declaration, I will no longer participate in my own diminishment. The path to freedom requires courage, not the absence of fear, but action in its presence. What small act of courage could you take today that would align your outer life more closely with your inner truth? What conversation have you been avoiding? What change have you been postponing? Key 4. Detached compassion. The final key is perhaps the most counterintuitive. True freedom comes not from disconnection, but from a deeper form of connection, one that embraces both attachment and detachment simultaneously. The 13th century Persian poet Rumi captured this perfectly. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Psychological research on mindfulness confirms this paradoxical truth. Studies show that individuals who practice compassionate detachment, caring deeply while releasing the need to control outcomes, show remarkable resilience in the face of life's challenges. This is not indifference. It's a more profound form of engagement, one that allows you to care deeply without being controlled by your caring. The uncomfortable freedom. Here's what no one tells you about liberation. It's uncomfortable. Deeply uncomfortable. When you step outside the cage you've lived in for so long, the sudden expanse of possibility can feel not like freedom, but like falling. Without the familiar walls to orient you, you may temporarily feel more lost than found. This discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you're finally doing something right. The 20th century philosopher Alan Watts described this as the wisdom of insecurity, the recognition that certainty was always an illusion, and that embracing uncertainty is the beginning of authentic freedom. Think about it this way. What if the anxiety you feel when facing the unknown isn't a warning to retreat, but your system recalibrating to a new way of being? What if it's not danger, but growth? This isn't abstract theory. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called this the dizziness of freedom, and knew it intimately. For him, anxiety wasn't a pathology, but the natural response to confronting the vastness of human possibility. Have you ever felt that vertigo when standing at the threshold of major change? That's not your system malfunctioning. It's awakening. It's living unchained. So where does this leave us? With a choice, we can continue to live in the comfort of our familiar constraints, rules we didn't choose, expectations we didn't examine, limitations we've mistaken for laws of nature. Or we can step into the discomfort of authentic freedom. This isn't about dramatic external changes, though those might come. It's about a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own existence. It's about recognizing that the prison was always of your own making, and therefore, the keys have always been in your possession. Start small. Question one assumption about yourself today. Challenge one should that governs your choices. Take one action that comes from your core rather than from expectation. Remember, freedom isn't the absence of limitations. It's the conscious choice of which limitations serve your authentic expression. The ancient Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, intentionally embracing difficulty to remember their resilience. Try it. Deliberately put yourself in mildly uncomfortable situations to build your tolerance for the unfamiliar. Reflect daily. Ask yourself, whose life am I living right now? Mine, or one designed to please others? And perhaps most importantly, cultivate compassion for yourself in this process. Freedom isn't achieved through self-criticism, but through self-understanding. The cage you've lived in wasn't built from malice, but from the very human desire for safety, belonging, and meaning. The problem wasn't the desire, it was the strategy. Now you have better ones. So I leave you with this question. Now that you can see the bars of your self-constructed prison, will you choose the familiar security of confinement? Or will you step into the dizzying, magnificent uncertainty of freedom? The door is open. The choice is yours. And unlike before, it can now be a conscious choice. That perhaps is the greatest freedom of all.